Number 1. Weird Guy. Although I really wasn't too popular in elementary school or in middle school, I finally made a few friends in high school. I guess I couldn't claim to have been popular, but at least I had a few friends to hang out with. It all started when I skipped school with a guy named Gary one day. Not having much to really do, we went around to the guitar shops and played guitar. I guess he didn't know that I played, and when he knew that I did, we ended up spending a lot more time hanging out. I also met some of his friends too. We mostly just hung out and played guitar all the time. It wasn't my absolute favorite thing to do, but I had friends for the first time, so that was cool. One Friday at school, Gary, who lived with his grandmother, told me that she was going to be out of town for the weekend. He said he was going to have a couple of guys over and that I should be there. I, of course, was happy to have something to do. Gary's grandmother lived right on the edge of town. It was a 2-story house next to the train tracks. Gary lived in the attic, and that is usually where we were when we were hanging out and playing guitar. I really didn't know all of Gary's friends, so I was feeling a little strange about being around all these new people. We stayed up really late playing guitar and hanging out the first night there. It was nice, but there was one guy who was just freaking me out just a little bit. His name was Ken, and he was just a bit weird. He didn't really play the guitar at all. He also didn't talk much, which I thought was weird. We were all up in Gary's room, so we were all sprawled out on a few pieces of furniture. I was laying on the bed, and at one point, the guy Ken reached over and pulled the mattress up. Without actually asking for Gary's permission, he got out his dirty magazines and began looking through them, while the rest of us just played guitar. That just struck me as odd. Even weirder, he didn't really interact well with any of us when he was looking at those magazines. However, occasionally, I would catch him looking up from his magazine and staring at me. He would be smiling and just looked unpleasant. Even though it was pretty warm in the attic, we all sort of drifted off to sleep at some point. It wasn't unusual, but I had a hard time sleeping in Gary's bed. I was uneasy and woke up once. I was surprised to see Ken was still up though, and he was still checking out those magazines. And he was looking at me with just the most unpleasant looking grin. I immediately just closed my eyes, unsure if he was aware that I ever woke up. The next time I woke up, he was still at it. I stumbled out of the room, mumbling something about needing a glass of water. When I was downstairs, it was much cooler than in the attic. I decided to crash out on the couch. I told myself I did it because it was cooler. But I really did it because of Ken. He just rubbed me the exact wrong way. I fell asleep pretty quickly and was woken up later. I heard someone fumbling around in the kitchen. I figured it was one of the other guys getting a glass of water. I just flipped back around and tried to go back to sleep. I woke up later because I felt the couch moving. I must have turned around in my sleep because I was no longer facing the back of the couch. I looked and immediately noticed what was moving the couch. Ken was sitting on the floor, with his feet bracing against the couch. He had his pants down and was jerking off with one hand while holding a knife in the other, and he was looking at me. I was really freaked now, but I don't think he noticed that I opened my eyes. With him holding the knife, I really didn't want to shock him or anything. So, I closed my eyes and pretended to go to sleep. However, it was hard to think about anything other than what this freak was doing. I just held my breath and waited until it was over. When it was, I felt him take his feet off the couch and stand up. I then felt the tip of the knife on my back as he traced it along the side. I prepared to be stabbed, but thankfully I wasn't. After a minute, he took the knife back into the kitchen and went back into the attic. I slipped out of the house and went home. I couldn't be in the same house as that freak, and when I told Gary about it, he went ballistic. I never saw the guy Ken again. Oh, and just so you know, this isn't anti-gay or anything. I don't even think Ken was gay. He was just very, very weird. Number 2. Bobby's house. I used to have friends over at my house for sleepovers quite a bit when I was a kid. I enjoyed it, but they were always coming over to my house. I guess my parents were happy that I had friends, but were unsure of why I never went to another friend's house for a sleepover there. I guess they wondered why I was insistent on always hosting. Honestly, I cannot even tell you why. Thinking back on it, I guess I just always felt more comfortable in my own home. Even when we went to visit relatives, I always had a hard time sleeping in another bed. When I was around 12 years old, my friend Bobby's mother would not let him come over and spend the night. But she told him it was all right if I came over and spent the night there. I was really in the mood for a sleepover, so I went ahead and did it. The night actually went really well. Bobby's mom went to bed early, but she allowed us to remain up later and watch movies. We, of course, watched a few scary movies without her permission. Bobby assured me that his mom slept like a rock and would not be woken up by the movie. By the time that we were done, we were both tired and really, really scared. "Hey, you want to try doing the Candyman thing?" Bobby asked me. I guess I should have mentioned that the last movie we watched was Candyman. I was too scared to actually want to do it, but also didn't want to seem like a wuss in front of my best friend. We went into the bathroom, and with the lights on, recited the name Candyman 5 times. We paused before the last one. I guess we were just trying to test the other one to see if he would go through with it. We did finally get it out. Then, Bobby flipped the light off, and of course, nothing happened. Even though nothing happened, we were both still generally frightened when we got into bed. We talked for a little while, and then went right to sleep. I woke up feeling thirstier than I could ever have imagined. Getting up, I stumbled out of bed and downstairs, while not turning on any light at all. When I walked into the kitchen, I turned the light on. Immediately, I saw a man, a huge man, at the far window. Actually, he was going through the window. He was half in and half out, and he was now looking right at me. I couldn't have waited too long, but it seemed like forever. I was terrified, and much more terrified than I had been when we did the Candyman thing earlier. I then began thinking, even though it was crazy that it was the Candyman showing up late. I was tired, so my thinking could not have been rational. But before the guy could get all the way through the window, I screamed and ran in the other direction and up the stairs back to Bobby's mother's room. I pounded on the door. Bobby had woken up, and he came into the hallway before his mom opened her door. Finally, the door opened. She looked at us and then suddenly past us. Both Bobby and I turned and noticed the man reaching the top of the stairs. Quickly, she ushered us into the room and locked the door. She called 911 and then grabbed her gun from the closet. She told the guy, who was now rattling the door, that she had a gun and would use it. That didn't deter him until she fired off a shot. He ran off. When the police got there, it turned out that Bobby's mother knew the man. He was an ex who was now stalking her. He violated a restraining order to get back into the house and get her. He was quickly arrested, and I never had a sleepover at anyone else's house ever again. Number 3. The Babysitter. You would think that if people actually listened to these horror stories, no one would ever babysit or deliver pizza again. There are just so many scary horror stories that seem to be related to one or the other. Mine has to do with babysitting. I normally babysitted for this family who had 2 young boys. They had the most beautiful house I had ever seen in my life. It was great. It was also out in the country, so it was always very creepy. The parents had to occasionally go out of town, and this time they were going to a wedding, so I would be at the house for several days. Now, I had been over at this house many times. I was used to it, even though there weren't any neighbors nearby. So it was weird that on the second night, while I was watching a movie with the 2 boys, there was a knock at the door. It just hadn't ever happened since I had begun watching them. So confused, I got up and went over to the door. Looking out the window before opening it up, I saw one of the creepiest looking men I had ever seen in my life. Keeping the chain on the door, I opened the door, and then asked him if I could help him. The man asked if the boys' parents were home. I wasn't about to let him know that they were out of town, so I told him they had temporarily gone to the store. I asked if I could leave a message for them. He declined, asserting he wanted to deliver the message himself. He said he would come back. About an hour later, the man came back to the door. He asked me if the parents had come back yet. I told him that they hadn't. He still wouldn't give me the message, but he did request to come in and wait for them. I told him I couldn't let him in, and he would just have to come back. He protested, insisting it wasn't easy to be constantly coming back and forth on the chance that he would miss the parents again. I insisted that he would not be allowed in the house. I could tell that he was pretty upset, and he left the house. I kept expecting the man to come back later, but he didn't come back for a few hours. It was finally time to put the kids to bed. They went to bed rather easily, and I went to watch more television. Really late, about 11 p.m., I heard the knocking again at the door. I walked over to it and looked through the window. Sure enough, it was the man again. Leaving the chain on the door, I opened it again. He again asked if they were home. I did not want him to know they were out of town, so I told him that they were home and that they had already gone to bed. I asked again if I could leave a message. The man visibly got very angry. I wasn't sure what to do, but I told him I wasn't going to wake them up. With speed I didn't know he could have had, the man reached through the opening of the door and grabbed my arm. He pulled my arm out the door. "Let me in or you're dead," the man screamed at me. "You're going to bed dead." I tried pulling my arm away from him, and he held steady. He repeated the threat over and over again. He kept pulling me hard, knocking my head against the open door more than once. I then noticed he let go with one of his arms. He grabbed a knife out of his jacket, and I freaked. Figuring I only had one chance, I did what he was doing to me. I was able to get him off balance, and his head hit the door. he let go of me and gave me enough time to pull my arm back in, shut and lock him out. I then ran and called the police. I was worried that the man would try to break in again. He didn't. He must have realized that he blew his only chance. The police came, and I had to call the parents, and they flew back immediately. They had no idea who the man could have been, and no one knows to this day. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. I wanted to let you all know that I'm going to upload a video that is going to be a new version of one of my first videos. I've been wanting to do it for a while, and since my audio equipment now is better than it was then, I think it would be nice to have better versions of them. So I hope you will really enjoy it once it comes out, probably tomorrow or the next day. If you want to read print versions of these stories, check them out at the Killer Orange Cat subreddit. Links to that and the merchandise store are in the description. In the meantime, if you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please consider hitting the subscribe button below, or using the icon of Ichigo that will appear at the end of this closing. Feel free to leave me a comment to let me know what you think of the video, and consider sharing it with someone you think might enjoy it. You can always follow Ichigo and myself on Facebook and Twitter using the links in the description. If you have a story you'd like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please send it to the address provided in the description. My main requirement is that the story is original, meaning it has not yet been read on any other YouTube channel. And please, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. And now I must flee. I'm too important to be captured.